Tassening of spring, the rites of spring, and it's not even going to be snowing on Monday for opening day. Luke Jones joins us now live from Oriole Park at Camden Yards, where the Orioles did their little walkthrough on Sunday, and a beautiful day. I mean, if Monday's as nice as Sunday, Luke Jones, it would be I don't want to say perfect, but from an opening day standpoint, a 9.5 out of 10. I'm not expecting it to be 82,
Yeah, I mean, if you get reasonable, at least cool weather, just so it's not cold, just so you don't have to break out your Ravens parka to go to an Orioles game in early April, you'll take it. A beautiful day on Sunday. Team gets on the field for the first time after the last 6-7 weeks in Sarasota, and they'll be adjusting to the new lights at the stadium. Of course, they didn't test those out Sunday afternoon when they worked out, but certainly a new season, certainly a lot of excitement, and you always want to get off to a good start on opening day, and hopefully the weather is at least comes close to what it was on Sunday, because it was beautiful out there.
All right, well, let's go through this soup to nuts. I mean, here are the Toronto Blue Jays coming in. A depleted version, I think we could all agree, but perhaps the pitching is a step better than it was last year, although who's to know? I mean, we were all laughing at Jay Happ. I remember that. And then nobody could go out there and get a hit off of him. But, watching the Yankees get pushed around in the early part of Sunday, any season that begins with the Yankees getting pushed around, I'll take that kind of season. That's a good season start.
Yeah, especially a season when they're counting on Tanaka to head up a rotation that has some talent, but certainly not a major strength. But yeah, you just said it about the Blue Jays. I mean, I think anyone who looks at that lineup now compared to what it was a couple years ago, and look, I still think that's a really good lineup over there, but clearly they're going to miss Encarnacion. They're going to be counting on guys like Kendrys Morales and Steve Pearce, former Oriole, coming over there and giving them some production. They're counting big time on Jose Bautista's down season a year ago being more about nagging injuries and less about the fact that he's just getting much older. And yeah. So there are some questions, but they still have Donaldson, they still have Tulowitzki, they still have Russell Martin. Go down the list. There's still some potent bats in that lineup. But I think, and this is something that we talked about this throughout the course of 2016, and I don't think they ever really got the credit that they deserved, maybe because they had lost David Price, and you said it, Jay Happ, expectations weren't high there, and you see what season he had. Estrada, Sanchez. I mean, they just Marcus Stroman, who wasn't fantastic, but certainly is we saw in the WBC what kind of potential he has. That's a rotation that the Red Sox are going to get all the attention because even with David Price's health issues, they still have Sale. They have Porcello, who won the Cy Young. They have some other options in the back half of that rotation, whether it's Eduardo Rodriguez or Pomerantz, just go down the list. But I think everyone looks at the name, the star power in the top trio for the Red Sox, and you just say, well, that's a great rotation. I think Toronto's a little deeper, 1 through 5. And they had the top starter ERA in the American League last year. So, long story short, I think the Blue Jays are still a really dangerous team. I'm picking Boston to win this division, but as I really mulled this over the last couple of weeks and looked at the roster, looked at the health situation that the Red Sox have right now, I think Toronto's a lot closer to the Red Sox than people think because they do have that starting rotation that I think has a chance to be really, really good again. And, you have a couple young guys in Sanchez and Stroman who can still get better. So I think there's a lot of upside with this Blue Jays team, even if their offense, isn't quite what it was, say, in 2015.
Well, and then you go across to the Oriole clubhouse. And look, man, I've been doing this so long. So I know you tweeted out 26th year. And I remember the first time I walked through Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I did it with John Stedman sort of unwittingly, the weekend before it opened. It boggles my mind that it was 25 years ago this week that we broadcasted from the Bird's Nest Cafe at the Holiday Inn. I should break that out on behalf of Mike Resigliano, who drew a great piece of artwork at one point. But it really is crazy 25 years into this. And, aside from my own issues and press credentials and stuff that this time of the year always sort of piss me off all over again about how these people operate and how they run the business. But now that I've seen our government, it all puts it into perspective. But I look at it and say, do we fill the city up? Do you fill the stands up? All of that stuff. But at some point, they need to get to a World Series and they need to win. And, Luke, the last couple of years, I've been more bullish, and you would agree. I mean, I had them at 93 wins last year. I thought they would be a good team once they started becoming a good team. This year, I don't feel that way about them. I don't feel like they've had a great offseason. I don't feel like they have stupendous superstars about to come. I feel like they've had some good fortune on injury and also some bad fortune over the course of time. But I am really worried about their pitching. And look, I don't spend the offseason saying, well, they got this guy and that makes them a 90-win team or an 85. I'm just looking at it right now because this is traditionally the time where I would put together my, wins and losses. My dad and I would sit down and say, you think the Cardinals are going to finish in second place or third place? How many wins are they going to have? Who's your Cy Young? This is the prediction time, right? Until the ball gets thrown. And I really started to think about the Orioles, and I thought, if you gave me $1 and made me put it on a number, my number would be 78 this year. And, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think they had a lot of good fortune. And, look, I'll buy into Buck's a genius and all of that stuff. I think coming back from what happened in Toronto last year, as much as I sat next to Dan Quinn at the owners' meetings last week talking about the disappointment of that, I think that they got some bootstrapping to do around here. And I don't know where the wins are going to come from, and I really don't know where they're going to get 4 or 5 quality starts a week that they're going to need to have to be a 90-95 win team, because I think that they're deficient in a lot of areas, and I think they've really done a lousy job in the offseason. And I haven't said that. I know Alan McCallum was, big on that last year about the deficiencies of the team that are glaring. But as I sit here on opening day, this is just a so-so team. And if they win 100 games, it'll shock the hell out of me. But if they only win 71, it wouldn't shock the hell out of me. Really, it wouldn't.
No, I don't know about 71. You're talking about a colossal drop there. And, I hear what you're saying. And, look, we've talked about the starting pitching every single year. And I'll say this much. I think the floor for the starting pitching is lower this year than it's been over the last few years. On the flip side, if Kevin Gausman pitches like he did over the final 2 months last year, if Dylan Bundy takes, and doesn't mean he becomes a Cy Young Award winner. It just means he becomes, say, a legitimate number 3 starter type. If Chris Tillman can come back and, say, make 22 starts and look mostly like Chris Tillman and had a good bullpen session over the weekend, they're expressing a lot of optimism now. We'll see. Certainly they've been down that road, and there's going to be a lot of skepticism there, understandable. Jimenez and Miley, they've had guys like that in their rotation for the better part of the last 4 or 5 years, or guys similar to that. That's nothing different. I hear you from a standpoint of, I don't see too many scenarios where I could see this team winning 95 games or upwards of that. That would be very, very surprising. On the flip side, I look at the fact that they did win 89 games last year, and I'm not sure I'm ready to say they're going to be 11 games worse than they were a year ago. I'm not sure Chris Tillman alone is worth that. I think you can make an argument that their lineup is a little bit better when you have Seth Smith in the mix now at a corner outfield spot. You have Hyun-Soo Kim now in his second full major league season. Yeah, Manny Machado, can he be better than he's been? He might be. I won't doubt it. I think Scope.
I think Machado and Scope are the guys going in the right direction, right? And we would say Bundy and Gausman are the guys going in that direction where if those are the 4 All-Stars this year, then they're going to be a really good baseball team. No disrespect to Adam Jones or Hardy or, any of the other guys getting paid to do this, but your guys on the upswing have to continue to go on the upswing while the Chris Davises and the Adam Joneses and the Trumbos, at some point, I would start to believe in regression, and I know Davis has shown that at various points, and Trumbo's been a choppy guy. So Scope and Machado to me, they could be all world. They could be 2 of the best players on the planet. And if they show that this year, then, I would buy into that they could win 92 games. I would. Yeah.
Well, Machado's already one of the best players in the planet.
Fair enough.
My point is, can he have an MVP season? Can he be better than Mike Trout? That can he be head and shoulders above a Josh Donaldson? And again, that's not to say you expect that to happen, but I think you can envision that happening. So, I'm picking them to be an 85-win team, and a lot of that is buying into the fact that I think they're going to hit a lot of home runs again. I think their offense will have some stretches where they struggle because we see that, and we know what kind of profile this lineup has, and they're going to have some tough times, but they're going to have some times where they look like the best offense in baseball. And we've seen that. Look at last June, the way they performed offensively. So, I still think it's a plus lineup overall, even with some of the shortcomings. I think the bullpen, even with Zach Britton not going 47 for 47 again, and I don't expect Zach Britton to have a 0.5 ERA again, it'd be ridiculous to expect that. But on the flip side, you have Michael Givens, another year established in the major leagues. I think Donnie Hart did some really nice things for them. Darren O'Day looks to be healthy. I think that's something that we kind of brushed over last year with the fact that they leaned so heavily on Brock and Givens for about half the season. So you get him back in the mix. I think there's a potential for the bullpen to be just as good, if not maybe a little bit better overall. And that's assuming Britton is still dominant, but maybe acknowledging that, hey, he might blow 2 or 3 saves over the course of the season.
You know what, man? That's another part I wouldn't acknowledge. I don't think the bullpen could be much better than it's been.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
So I expect that to not be as good, quite frankly, because it's been pretty damn good for a couple of years, and at some point, we'll start to come off a little bit more, and that happens even more with looking at this, they're going to get taxed. I mean, I don't know how they're not going to tax the bullpen and how they're not going to use arms that are currently at Norfolk at this point.
Yeah, we've said that every year, though. I mean, I hear you. Believe me, I hear you. I have all the same concerns you do, but at some point...
You need to be the optimist here, or I'm not going to look good, Jones. You got to be the sunshine guy. It's opening day.
Well, that's why I said I still see them being an 85-win team and not making one of the 2 wild card spots, but being there until the final week.
So you don't expect them to win the World Series either. I mean, we can all acknowledge that they could win the World Series. I mean,
sure.
If Gausman becomes Jake Arrieta, yeah, sure. And Wade Miley becomes serviceable, sure. I mean, I'm not saying they can't, but all things being equal, having watched baseball, only 48 years or so, this might, you can make a case that this is the worst team that they've fielded on opening day in the last 4 or 5 years, which is why I'm not bullish on them. I'm not over the top on them. I don't think they had a very good offseason. I don't think they've had 2 very good off seasons now, and I think that starts to add up, and I don't know where the youth is coming from. While other teams like the Yankees are running around talking about this prospect there and that prospect, I still see Machado and Scope sort of as prospects, even though they've all been here a while now. But I see them, that is our youth movement. There's nothing else sort of coming, the Chance Ciscos of the world. And I think on opening day, it's the day you get excited about all this and say, where is that diamond in the rough? I don't think they have that at this point. They just have diamonds that need to shine if they're going to, be in this thing in September.
Yeah, and well, I mean, and this goes back to what I said, and this is why, I'd be surprised if they're, if they win 72 games, I would be surprised because this is a very similar team to last year. I mean, look, starting pitching was an issue last year. I mean, and you might say, okay, well, they got rid of Yovani Gallardo. I didn't see Yovani Gallardo as a positive contributor last year. He was just kind of there. So, I hear exactly what you're saying, but at the same time, I think Seth Smith is an upgrade over, trotting Nolan Reinhold out there in right field, and what they were dealing with the corner outfield spots.
He's still here, right? Nolan Reinhold. He's going to be there on opening day, right?
No,
okay.
He's not.
I just want to be. I want to be.
I know,
I'm just updating everybody because they can't have an opening day without Nolan Reinhold, right? I mean, come on,
right? Well, they do have Craig Gentry, who had a phenomenal spring. A guy who, in his prime, where he was 2012, 2013, he's not a tremendous hitter, but fantastic defensively, has speed. He's probably going to play against left-handed pitching, probably going to be a late-inning defensive replacement for either Seth Smith or Hyun-Soo Kim. And, they're going to kind of have him and Rickard as their 4th and 5th outfielders. Trey Mancini in that mix as well, to some degree, at least for right now. But Gentry wearing Reimold's old numbers, so you'll see him, and he'll probably remind you a little bit of Nolan Reinhold. But but just going back to my point, I think overall this team is pretty similar to what it was last year. I mean, you swap out leaders. I've said all along, I think Wellington Castillo at worst is going to be a wash there, and I think he has the potential to be better than Matt Wieters at Wieters' this stage of his career. So, Chance Sisco could be in the mix at some point in 2017. I know he impressed some people in the Grapefruit League, so we'll see how that plays out. But I think they'll be okay there. Chris Davis, what are you going to get? Last year he had the thumb issue all year long. Are you going to get a guy that I don't expect 2013 to happen again? That was his career year, but can he be what he was 2 years ago, which was a guy who was up there, flirting with 50 home runs? Can he be a guy who hits 40 or 45? Contrumbo, not going to hit 47 again, but Contrumbo still hit 38 home runs. So, they're going to hit home runs. There's no doubt about that. The question is, can they do enough other things offensively well enough? Their bullpen, I heard the point you said, and when I say it could be better, I'm not talking, they can't be much better than they were last year. I do think there's an argument to be made that the bullpen can be deeper this year, though, and that's something that matters. That's something that could work to their favor. And, you don't have Brad Brock wear down like he did in the second half last year and, was not nearly what he was in the first half. So, this team still has a lot of stuff going for it. And I hear the point you make. Was it the most dynamic offseason in the world? No, but at the same time, I'm also not going to look at this team and say that I think it's much worse than it was a year ago because I just don't see that. The starting pitching, as I said, has a lower floor. At the same time, you do have two guys in Gausman and Bundy with more ability, more talent than most of the guys that they've run out there over the last 5 to 6 years. So, even though the floor is lower and things could get really, really ugly from the starting pitching side, like even uglier than we're used to, there's a scenario where the starting pitching, not going to be top 5, not going to be their biggest strength, but I could see it being better than expected if you get a step forward from Gausman and he looks like what he did in August and September, and if Dylan Bundy takes another step and stays healthy and looks like the guy they hoped he was going to be 6 years ago. And, clearly Tillman is a major wild card in this. If they can get him back, even if it's 22, 23 starts, and he looks at least like a decent version of Chris Tillman that we've seen over the last 5 years, then, that rotation looks a lot better. It at least looks good enough that with their other strengths, good enough to contend for a playoff spot. But, there's certainly, I think it's absolutely fair, whether you think they're going to win 90, whether you think they're going to win 85, whether you think they're going to win 78, you have to acknowledge that the rotation going into the season, knowing that Chris Tillman's not going to pitch before early May at best, there's plenty of unknown, plenty of concern there. I think a little more than normal even in this current era.
That's why I go with 78, because of Tillman and because of the bottom of the rotation and because the bullpen's been really good traditionally. And I think, the bullpen is the one thing that stacks up more than, catchers catching too much and a lot of other things that could go wrong. I mean, it's sort of like team speed not taking a day off, right? In defense, usually, you can count on that. You don't have a third, a fourth, and a fifth starter. One thing you can count on is your bullpen's going to stink because it just can't sustain it. So, and I think we haven't seen a lot of that around here, but it's open. For me, Tillman, Luke, I'm not counting him for any starts. As I sit here today and putting 78 in, I can't look at Tillman based on the offseason, based on where he was at the end of last year, based on where he is on opening day, that all of a sudden somebody's going to rub some magic oil on him and a month from now he's going to be better and be able to get major league hitters out, spot fastballs, have the kind of control that he needs to have. If that were to happen in the middle of July, maybe, but I don't believe that's happening in May, and you and I will be revisiting this frequently. And if Chris Tillman has 6 wins by the All-Star break, I'm wrong. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I really don't.
Fair enough. I mean, no one knows. I mean, they haven't exactly, come out and said exactly what it is. We know it's shoulder. We know it's something that's lingered, and popped
and that's
up again,
not good, right?
I
mean, it just on the face of it, if it were anyone, you'd say not good at the end of last year, not good at the beginning of this year. It hasn't been right in 7 months. I don't care who he is. If to think that he's going to contribute this year at the top of your rotation, boy, that's heady stuff there. I mean, the Rangers have gone through that, right, with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, I don't want to cast a fate for a guy before he even gets back on the mound and see what it looks. I mean, he had a cortisone shot. Look, I'll say this much, and I'll say this right now, regardless of what happens in 2017. I would not be looking to re-sign Chris Tillman at the end of the year based on how the shoulder is trending, and that's even if he gets back and, let's say he can make 20 starts, which, that would mean he misses close to 2 months. That would put him kind of in that late May category. And let's say he pitches to a 3.95 or 4.05 ERA, which is still serviceable, still solid, especially everything he's been through. At that point, I'd say I wouldn't be really hot and bothered about looking to re-sign him in the offseason based on that. But, at the same time, they are expressing a lot of optimism. I know, he talked in the clubhouse on Sunday that he felt better than he thought he would. Buck Showalter echoed that. We'll see. Again, I hear what you're saying loud and clear. It's why I asked him about his shoulder way back at FanFest before any of this came out about him getting a PRP injection. But at the same time, there have been pitchers who have had shoulder issues and pitchers who've had elbow issues who have come back without it being a catastrophic scenario. There's examples of both, and there's definitely reason for skepticism. But at the same time, I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't think Chris Tillman's going to pitch this year yet either. I think it's way too premature for that. But it's clear that they're counting on him to be able to contribute in some meaningful way, and if he can't, then things become very, very much more so problematic.
He is Luke Jones. I was making my predictions. You can find our predictions out on Twitter and Facebook and the like as well. You can reach Luke at WNST.net. He'll be at the ballpark Monday and Wednesday. And, as we get into this thing here, this is going to be fun, right? I mean, this is hope springs eternal, but I'm not as hopeful on opening day. And for that, there is disappointment because I think the last couple of years, after a long, long stretch here where, I lost my press credentials complaining about last place too many times, this is one of those years where I can't honestly jump on and think that they're going to be playing baseball in October here. And I think that does lead to a little bit of this. I think I feel it a little bit in social media. I feel it around town. Yeah, it's opening day and all, but do we really have a chance to win? If they're going to win, Luke, I'm looking at the offensive stats from last year, and I've looked at these all off season. I don't know that there will ever be, and I know this was written about historically amongst a bunch of nerds who measure all these things. Show me a lineup where guys hit 37 home runs and only drove in 96, hit 29 home runs and only drove in 83, hit 47 home runs, only drove in 108, hit 38 home runs. Chris Davis hit 38 home runs and drove in 84 runs. That's really hard to do for any one guy in any lineup. It's harder when you have that many power hitters, and the RBI numbers don't match the home runs because there aren't enough ducks on the pond.
Sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that's why they went out and added Seth Smith. That's why they're hoping that Hyun-Soo Kim can continue what he did last year when he had the highest on-base percentage on the team. They're hoping that Chris Davis isn't probably going to hit 300 or anything like that, but they're hoping he can hit 250 with an on-base percentage of somewhere in the neighborhood of 365. That's why they're hoping Manny Machado, the patience that he showed 2 years ago, second half last year, he got a little home run happy, I think, and he can get back to being, a little bit of a higher on-base percentage guy. Not that he wasn't a decent OBP last year. So there's no doubt about that. I mean, there's some things that they have to do better offensively than they did a year ago. Still not a bad offense. I mean, watch some other teams around baseball who, this is kind of a trend around the league. Offense is really, it's become such a three true outcomes thing. Home run, strikeout, walk. The Orioles hit plenty of home runs. They strike out plenty. The walks, that's where you'd like to see a little bit more. And, I'm not sure there's not an abundance of guys in this lineup, but, Seth Smith alone, a guy who has a career on-base percentage much higher than most of the guys in this lineup, I think that's going to help. And, you hope some other guys make some marginal improvement there. But, at the same time, I I get it. I know what the rotation looks like, but I still look at this team and I don't see it as being dramatically different than it was last year, and they won 89 games. So, I'm not ready to be.
I think the pitching's
Debbie Downer.
dramatically different. I would disagree that if you don't have Tillman, it's dramatically different. If Tillman comes back 8 weeks from now, yeah, I mean, I'll hear that. I will.
It's one guy, though. I mean, Chris Tillman's not a Cy Young Award winner. I mean, I hear you. Believe me. I'm not saying they won't miss Chris Tillman, but, I'm not sure Chris Tillman alone is an 11-win player that takes them from 89 to 78. That's how I look at it.
Dude, Miley had an ERA of 5.5, and they're counting on him. You know what I mean? What do you think you're going to get? I mean, Jimenez, a 5.5 ERA, and he blew the biggest game of the year for you. They're bringing these guys back and giving them the ball every fifth day. I don't know how I can have a lot of hope in that, Luke, other than the fact that they might score 8 runs every night. I mean, they really might, literally.
Well, but at the same time, you also look at Wade Miley's career numbers and say, well, there's probably a decent chance he can be better than what he was last year. Ubaldo Jimenez, we've seen him pitch really well for stretches of time. Other times, he's out of the rotation. So, believe me, there's unknown. There's no doubt. But we've been having the same conversation for 5 years now. And at some point, I start to give them the benefit of the doubt, at least a little bit, that, well, you know what? The rotation never really looks all that good, but, all but one of those years they've been winning and in contention until late September. Doesn't mean they've made it every year, but, that's how I kind of feel like I will give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because, they have done it. Not to get to the pinnacle, but at least where they're in it and in the race come late September. And, I think they'll figure it out again. I mean, I do. And that's even acknowledging that, the starting pitching could be a big problem. That's why I said the starting pitching, I think the floor is lower than it's been in past years, but I think there are enough guys in that rotation that there is upside for it to be good enough, but it's a big if.
I just wish there was a Tyler Wilson or a Mike Wright that we actually believed could move into that spot somewhere and be not the high end of a Bundy or a Gausman, just something that looked like a guy who could be a major league pitcher, because I haven't seen that yet from those guys.
Well, you take this for what it's worth, and maybe it's just the unknown is better than the known, but for what it's worth at this point, Jason Aquino and Gabriel Ynoa are both ahead of Mike Wright and Tyler Wilson in the pecking order for the number 5 starter job. Now, can one of those guys be what Miguel Gonzalez was 5 years ago, come out of nowhere and give you a solid performance as a number 4, number 5 starter? Well, if that happens, then their rotation looks better than what it does now. There's no doubt.
Miguel Gonzalez, not even opening day, and you've already broken that one out, haven't you?
Well, I still go back to that. Miguel Gonzalez ended up having a pretty Miguel Gonzalez-like year last year. Not an ace, not a number 2, not a number 3 in a good team.
From what I hear, Brady Anderson's still pissed off about Jake Arrieta, right? I mean, so,
well, he's not alone, though. Many Orioles fans are ticked off about that.
Well, all right, man. Well, look, we'll have plenty of time to argue about this. The Blue Jays and the Orioles getting it going under gloriously sunny conditions on Monday afternoon. You know where to find Luke. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. And freshly off another wonderful evening of WrestleMania. We'll save that for the next segment, though, okay? I don't. There's no spoiler alerts around here. I can be reached nasty at WNST.net. We're going to be around all week. We'll be talking some NFL around here. We're certainly going to mix in some post-mellow Terp stuff here before it's over with. Monitoring the Caps, monitoring the Wizards, as well as anything the Ravens might be doing, as well as the old Raiders to Oakland thing. We'll be talking a little bit about that. But we've got you covered out on social media anywhere you are. We are, including the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault. We'll be there 24 hours a day with anything you need for anything you miss. And, of course, the morning newspaper at 7 a.m. It does come directly to your email inbox. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. You can sign up at WNST.net. Breaking news that'll happen first on the text service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. I'm Nestor. He's Luke. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.